Hello and welcome to the WARC podcast. My name's Amy Rodgers and I'm part of the WARC content team. And today we're recording from a very hot and sunny Cannes Lions festival. Now we're towards the end of the festival and this evening the winners of one of the most important awards, in my opinion, are announced, and that is the Creative Effectiveness Lions. So in this episode we're going to be discussing the winning campaigns from the Creative Effectiveness category because we have the inside scoop from the jury room from my two guests today. I'm joined by Bertille Toledano from BETC and Havas Creative, and by Jane Wakely from PepsiCo. Both were on the Creative Effectiveness jury, Bertille as jury president, so today we're going to get their insights fresh from the judging room.
The industry is full of opinions, but brands don't make decisions based on opinions. They make them based on evidence they can trust. Partner with the leading industry authority on marketing effectiveness to make your case. Lions Advisory brings together decades of trusted expertise from WARC, Cannes Lions, Effie, and Contagious to create industry-defining thought leadership. From crafting the narrative to amplifying it at scale and placing it in front of key decision makers. So your story doesn't just add to the conversation, it defines it. Learn more at lions.co/thought leadership.
Now, it's almost the end of the festival. It's a crazy week, particularly if you're judging, I think. So, Bertille, Jane, if you can remember what you do in real life when you're not in the south of France baking in the heat, could you just give us a brief intro to you and your roles? Jane, can I start with you?
Sure. I've got the longest title in history. EVP, Chief Consumer and Marketing Officer of PepsiCo, Chief Growth Officer, International Foods. I'll just summarize it with, I would prefer to be known as Chief Smiles Officer.
Brilliant. And Bertille?
I am the CEO of BETC, and at the same time, I'm the CEO of Havas in the Middle East. That's going to switch to become BETC agency in Riyadh, BETC agency in Dubai, in Oman. And I'm the president of the Havas Creative Network.
Brilliant. Okay. Great. So we'll get on to discussing the individual campaigns in the creative effectiveness category a little bit later on in the podcast. But I just wanted to start out with some general trends from kind of this year's entries and judging. Bertille, I'm sure you've been on many juries in the past, but how did you find being president of the creative effectiveness category this year? Was that a different experience being president?
Very different, in fact. Very interesting. I didn't work. They worked. No, it was really a very interesting experience. In fact, when you are president, you are giving a vision of what is creative effectiveness, what are you looking for, a limit. And this was approximately the most important thing that you do, because when you are clear about the vision, then you have to make sure that all the jurors, they share your vision of what is a great creative work or what it should be a great creative work effectiveness prize. So you are sure that you can celebrate the same types of work at the end of the week. So that's what we did first. And we were very focused on the fact that we wanted to be works that speaks to real people. I told them to your mothers, and so everyone's got a different mother, but you can feel a little bit what it's mean by the type of work you can talk to during lunchtime, and people know about it and feel it and move real people in the real world. So I wanted to we celebrate work that goes beyond this world to be sure that we get closer from the people.
Yeah, great. And Jane, how did you find it, and how was Bertille as president? Because obviously you set the agenda, so...
No, Bertille was incredible. From day one, I think she aligned us with an incredible vision of the difference we could make through judging this work very responsibly and being true to a vision of what true creative effectiveness, how we should measure greatness. I'm sure she's going to say more about that. So I think setting the vision was one important part. The second is, I thought our jury was spectacular in terms of the diversity in the room. We had people from every continent. We had strategists, we had planners, we had business leaders. And actually what Bertille did brilliantly was she made the most of every voice in the room. And we had such great mature discussions. And I think we all learned something through the process. I know I feel it's been my most enjoyable can. So thank you, Bertille.
Thank you so much, Jane. No, but they were an incredible bunch, I say, of nasty, witty people. Because in fact, they were very honest people. They had no posture. Nobody was a CMO, a CEO, a creative or art director anymore. They were just people looking at the work with the precision of surgery and at the same time the broad vision of leading people and people that know that in order to make real great work, you have a big vision of what you are doing, a big vision of what is your job, a big vision of what is this brand about. And only with this big vision, you can leverage work that truly speaks to everybody and goes beyond advertising. And I think that we were all looking for the same things. That's what makes it very interesting, because after you can feel what resonates with people from Japan, with people from Brazil, with people from America, or with people from England that live in America. So I think that all this is interesting point of view in a time, especially today, where people don't listen to each other and have great difficulty to communicate. But really communicate means move themselves during the discussion.
Yeah. And I think also the other thing that really helped was because we were creative effectiveness, we're also looking at a lot of analytics and results. And what I found was our different experience with the data made us as a collective much more incisive on whether, this case, we may all love it creatively, but did it drive impact behaviorally in terms of the good it does for society, whatever the objective was. And we had some killer discussions
about retention, acquisition, penetration, growth in value, growth in volume. And the people, they were not joking about the figures. They all did their homework before to come. And so the level of the discussion was the level of CMO, CEO debating of, is it a real growth or is it a value growth without volume growth? Does it change in terms of share of market? And after all this, does it change in some way the life of people? When you do beautiful thing in the railway train station in Japan, in fact, you can change people's life, because when you commute, when you travel, it's a little bit more beautiful. It's a little bit more talking to you, and this type of work is very interesting, I feel.
I thought that was an interesting one when I saw that on the shortlist, actually, because this is the My Japan Railway work. It won in a design category last year, or I think it was last year. And you don't often see design work coming through to creative effectiveness. Probably you will more in the future, more. But I really noticed that one because it wasn't a piece of work that I was very aware of coming from the effectiveness side of things. And I saw that on there, and I just thought that was a really interesting one to make the shortlist and to be awarded, because it's very design focused, but to your point, it's beautiful work, and it did actually make a difference as well. So it's good to hear that those conversations in the room were very focused on the effectiveness.
And just to give you one illustration, if I may, about that case, we really went deep on interrogating the data, saying, well, hold on a minute, rail travel in the context of post-COVID is going up anyway. So we were able to ask strategic questions to each other to really validate, is this a category game changer or not? Is it just riding a wave of other macro factors? And we also had the opportunity to ask questions back to Cannes, back to, through Cannes to the clients and the whole verification process. I want to thank Cannes for putting in more strategic rigor on verifying results, but also giving us as juries the opportunity to interrogate some of the data where we're not clear, get more perspective on it. That really helped us get to a much more considered response. And I think, thank you, Cannes, for putting that in, and let's build on that for next year.
Yeah, that's really brilliant to hear. Just on all of those metrics and the measurement and the kind of rigor behind all the cases, do you think from the work that you judged this year, and obviously just to put this into context, you have hundreds of entries into the category that then get whittled down to a long list, which then gets brought down to a short list, and you have lots of discussions in the room to get that down to the 14, I think, lions that were awarded. Do you think that measurable creative effectiveness is getting stronger from what you've seen this year and that, the rigor and the measurability behind creative effectiveness?
Oh, yes, I do. I think that creative effectiveness has always been a very tough price, to be honest, because having these figures, sharing these figures, because some clients they don't share. It's not so easy to share your figures with everyone. So and the precision of your figure, most of the time you've got lots of retailers in the creative effectiveness. Why? Because retailers have a perimeter that is very clear. So when they have some figures, they can put it on the table very clearly. When you're a brand, it's sometimes more delicate because there are other promotion or activations that are going on. Being capable to isolate the figures that really link to the campaign and to the what you did, it's not an easy job. So it's a kind of prize that asks for a lot of work. And when you have to get all this precision, because now Cannes Lions are asking for more, so it means that each figure has to be proved. You have to give the survey where it comes from. And there are some survey that are not equivalent to other studies, And this is also interesting for us because we look precisely at the studies, the source, where the figures are coming from, And I think that all this work make it very professional. And I feel that the fact that the prize who won the prize was the one that did the best job in titanium last year, make it also very clear that creativity work. It's amazing.
Good news! Decades of benchmarking, insights, and best-in-class case studies are now available at the push of a button. Lions Intelligence is the new operating system for creative marketing excellence. With state-of-the-art AI technology and established marketing insights from the WARC, Contagious IQ, and WARC, all in a single adaptive workspace that evolves with your thinking. Save hours of manual work and share your thinking with clarity and confidence. Lions Intelligence is where groundwork becomes great work. Insight, strategy, creativity, execution, all in one place. To learn more, check out intelligence.lions.co.
Let's talk about the work as we're here. We know what the Grand Prix is now. It's being announced this evening. This year's Grand Prix was AXA's 3 words. Why did you pick the Grand Prix in the end and what made it stand out? Because I know there was a lot of debate towards the end as to which one was going to get the Grand Prix. So, what made this one win?
I feel that at the end of the afternoon, we had 2 major contenders. And both of them were great work. I must say great work. The Pedigree work and the AXA work were great work because they did both something that the other one didn't. And we have some very good work already before in silver. But they have a broader vision of their brand, of their social cultural impact. And both brands have a social and cultural impact. The slight difference between one and the other, I would say, was probably the level of the stake, I would say. The higher the stake, the higher the reward, I would say. I don't want to compare dogs and women, because at the end of the day, this is a little bit the case. But the fact that in our society, in our European society, I'm not speaking of somewhere else in the world, here where you are in Cannes, a woman die every 3 days under the heat of her companion. It is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a crazy stat.
It's a crazy start. And the fact that adding 3 words to an insurance policy can do so much. Because in fact, it is about leaving your home, because your home becomes your most dangerous place on earth. So you have to be capable to leave, but nobody has 2 homes. Doesn't happen. And having a place where you can hide and you can start to rebuild yourself with your children, and this is massive, Now they did it, and probably all the home insurance policies are going to make it, because this is so important, and there are so many countries that should do it.
And we felt, honestly, both those cases have done an incredible job of reframing the category they're in, going to a higher order human insight. If you start thinking, I'm a home insurer, how can I grow? What can I do better? It's a very low interest category. Bertille was sharing, in France, it's a legal requirement. Everybody has to have home insurance, right? It's very difficult to stand out as a brand. But, by thinking not about, I'm a home insurance company or I'm an insurance company, what can I do slightly better? They completely reframed the game by thinking very human-centric first. What are the pain points people living in homes are suffering with? This is a very extreme pain point, but how might we alleviate that? And I think what you shared, and this is an example of the lack of self-interest in the jury. Bertille's client is the main competitor to AXA.
And
So she knows how hard this is. But for this brand, who have stood for a broader purpose, to put it at the center of their growth strategy, this isn't a stunt. This is real at-scale action. It went retrospectively into all their policies. And results-wise, it caused a stunning increase in short-term sales, but also long-term equity as well. So the commercial side was also there. So for us,
moving the consideration, which is
yes,
something that is very important when you're managing a brand, moving from the second place to the first place when you're managing a brand, something you don't do every day, and probably less when you're an insurance company, because who cares about insurer? No, but honestly, this is not a massive involvement. You pay for something you hope you never use. So it's
But a simple change that kind of made people care, right? And
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was
and that they went big on. They went courageously and put it at the heart of their growth strategy. We saw other cases where
it was still on the corner.
it was still, on the corner of their strategy and an addition to the strategy. This, they made their strategy. And the same for Pedigree, actually.
It's the same. The story of the caramello. I love caramello. In French, we say caramel. Caramel. It's a nice name. To say a bastard or a mutt. I don't know how you call it.
A mutt.
Okay. So a mutt. And I think that it resonates in Brazilian culture in a way that nobody was even expecting in the room. Some people were a little bit aware because it resonated a lot also in South Africa, I feel. But Puma told us. But for Brazilian people who think of themselves as being underdogs, people that never feel legitimate to be on the forefront. So this starts to be very meaningful because it starts to be a prize for all the bastards of the world, and so it makes a lot of sense. Suddenly, it resonates, and the fact that the brand's name Pedigree for all the unpedigree people, I feel that
it completely flips that on its
yeah.
head, doesn't it? And
it's a total disruption of your own name.
Well, yeah, I think brave for that brand as well is in the same way that AXA, it was kind of, it's a brave move to do that. The same with Pedigree, kind of just completely going against what your brand name literally says. Yeah, and also the similarities between those two campaigns in that they're both campaigns that moved something for a cause. So in this case, adoption of Mutts in Brazil, but also for the brand, and had amazing brand results as well on that campaign.
And they both reframed their categories. So if you think about it, because the Pedigree one, getting more dogs adopted is a growth strategy in itself. It expands the category. So, but and that's very consistent. Pedigree have been doing this for a long time, and in all honesty, I know it quite well. But I think this team, have taken the creativity to an extraordinary level. And one of the jurors, one of the jury presidents, the strategy president, said today that strategy can either be she used diving board as an example. And she said you can either use strategy as you jump on a diving board and you dive in and it takes you deep and narrow and tight, or you can use it as a springboard to leap and be a little bit more braver, a little bit braver, a little bit more ambitious. And I thought that's what the Pedigree team have done for me. I think they've done an extraordinary job.
Yes, this is the kind of brand that have a bigger vision of their job, And I think that we are all starving for people, leadership that has a big, huge vision of what they are doing. I have a big vision of advertising. You've got a big vision of marketing and what does this mean to be a
growth
FMCG
architect, yeah.
and a growth architects in the FMCG sectors. And I feel this is important because you can't manage people, you can't embrace people if you don't propose them something that is meaningful and has a huge vision, a broad vision.
Yeah. I mean, these two cases, there was very strong alignment really from minute one that these were the two that were head and shoulders above. There wasn't a single person in the room who came in with a different view. So it was about...
In a way, it makes the job easier, but harder at the end to separate them, maybe.
But I feel
it was
that
still clear.
Yeah, and when you've got a gold in creative effectiveness in Cannes,
it's amazing. Amazing.
You've done your job right.
Yeah,
amazing.
You've done a big job, big job, a big hoorah, a big brava.
So unfortunately, we don't have time to discuss every piece of work today. I wish we could, because they're all absolutely brilliant, and you will be able to read them all on WARC very shortly. But Jane, do you have another campaign that kind of stood out to you, or that you wished you worked on, maybe, that we haven't discussed yet?
I was jealous of several of them, actually. So let me pick one. I think the one that just sung from the way the case was written to the creative to the results was IKEA hidden tags.
Yeah.
It is brilliant. And for those of you that haven't seen the case study, it is basically the idea, and it rung true with me as an IKEA faithful in a way, that the perception of IKEA furniture is that it doesn't last. And in fact, that is just not true. They've had lines which have been going, I think it was since the 1950s. And so they came up with this brilliant idea that was an incentive to check your hidden tag. So every IKEA piece of furniture has a hidden tag somewhere on it that basically dates it. And so they created this competition, and they had thousands of entries of people revealing their hidden tag to find the oldest piece of IKEA in the market. Now, from that came an even bigger sort of, I think even more interesting cultural insight, which is that actually the reality is IKEA furniture lasts longer than most relationships, which I thought was a hilarious way to reframe. And they really broke through in terms of their brand meaning. They got consumers acting differently. And Bertille made the joke about retention and acquisition, because we had many, many strategic questions about what this case did. But essentially, they did both. They really massively boosted their loyalty scheme, but they also brought in a lot of new users, because, of course, it's such a mind-opening insight, and it was done in such a fun way.
Yeah, and it just makes people want to go and have a look. Like, I want to go and have a look at my IKEA furniture now and find the little sticker and find out how old it is. It's a really fun way to get people engaged with the campaign.
It's super fun. And we always say, in a world where each of us receives 10,000 messages a day, 10,000, pieces of comms a day. You have to grab attention. You have to move people. You have to make them laugh, make them cry, make them feel something. And that was just pure joy. And I thought whoever had that insight, it was so fun and so brilliantly executed.
And amazing that they haven't changed the way that they tag products in that length of time as well, to even make that a possible campaign. Those stickers haven't changed in however many years it is, which I thought was brilliant. Yeah, that's a really good one, a really nice one. You mentioned there at the start you liked the way that paper was written. So I wonder if you have any kind of tips for our listeners on how to write a good effectiveness paper, or was there anything you kind of wish more effectiveness papers did or did better?
Yes, look, the good papers had data in them that were well sourced from credible sources. So we really delved on sources and where people had used, a survey amongst 100 people, for example, versus, a much broader business metric. So what are we looking for? We're looking for behavior change. We're looking for attitude change, yes, but behavior change, really. And so sourcing that and giving context on that, I think is, if I can give one tip, so I do not like indices, because an indices without context could mean anything. Like, I'll give you an example, which I've read recently. There was a 400 index on something. A 400 index could be from 0.1% improve, to 0.4. Or it could be from 10 to 40, completely different magnitudes. So I think the one thing you should really think about is to stand out in creative effectiveness. You really need to have driven an impact, a behavioral impact, a growth in your business, a growth in consumer behavior in some way, shape, or form. So you need to evidence that. And I would say if you haven't gathered enough evidence, think about the sources you need, but also think about the time length. Make it substantial. Don't use indexes, or if you use an index, give the category context behind it so it can be put into context of how extraordinary was it. Put it into a competitive context, put it into a category context. So context matters. And I think just to build on context, I think there's a section at the end of the case which says, are there other mitigating factors that could have discounting factors that impacted? The cases that were well written were really honest and transparent on that.
Yeah.
So, and you can quickly, when you have, 8 to 10 people looking at these things, you quickly brainstorm what should be the things we should be watching out for here. And so my advice is, be really thoughtful about that, because by bringing transparency to that, it gives a lot more credibility to the data sources. And so we were as rigorous as we could be. We're pretty rigorous in our discussions. And that was where, the diversity of the room was helpful, because we had different perspectives and different contexts. And the final thing is, I think I've learned through this not so much through this jury, a bit through this jury, but a bit through seeing how some other work has fared and not fared. You need to give a lot of cultural context to your market. My observation is the more emerging, developing markets do that very naturally. So they set the cultural context, they set why the insight is important, they do that. I feel with some of the developed markets, particularly cases, this isn't from my own jury, this is from looking at other works, sometimes that is missing.
Yeah, you forget that not everyone knows what context you're talking about, because, yeah.
Absolutely. So if you're an American and you're putting in a big creative effectiveness case, you're going to be, for example, judged by a very international audience from many different countries, and who might not understand the insight and context of your brand or your category for that market. So always put it in, regardless of what market. And that either shows that your case is doing well, you're doing okay, or you're changing the game in your category. And that's what you really want to show. Because, I go back to in my world, which is CPG, 70% of growth comes from category growth, not from share growth. So if you want to be a game changer, put it in context, show the impact on the category.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't assume everyone knows the cultural context of your campaign. That's a great piece of advice. Thank you. That's all we have time for today. Thank you so much to Bertille and Jane for taking the time to talk to us today. If you enjoyed this podcast, have a look for the rest of our podcast series direct from the festival, and please subscribe if you don't already. Until next time, thanks for listening.